Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Emmy Amarati, and I am Assistant Director of our ACU Online Writing Center. Tonight, we're presenting a short webinar on writing about anecdotes in APA format, and I have also been joined by my wonderful colleague, Dr. Basil Considine, who will be interjecting periodically. Say hi, Basil.
Hello.
Hi. Keep in mind that tomorrow we'll send out links to the recording and slide deck for this webinar, and the links to the resources in the slide deck will be active. You're also welcome to email me directly if you'd like a copy of the APA course paper template we will use later during the webinar. During the presentation, Dr. Considine will be jumping in to ask questions or make comments as needed, and we will have some fun discussion about writing about anecdotes in APA format. So first, these are our learning objectives for the webinar. By the end of the session, we will have used COMO 460 Week 1, Assignment 1, Defining Health Communication, to understand the characteristics and purpose of anecdotes, write about personal experiences in APA format, and develop an APA formatted draft. So let's begin by focusing on learning objective 1, understand the characteristics and purpose of anecdotes, and we will especially focus on the context of healthcare. To prepare to write about anecdotes, we first need to understand what an anecdote is. So an anecdote is a narrative or a story told in an informative and reflective way to help the audience understand the experiences of the storyteller or a character in the story. And by extension, the audience will then understand better their own experiences. When we write anecdotes, we can answer the set of questions people sometimes refer to as the 5 W's and 1 H: who, what, when, where, why, and how. For instance, a supervisor who wants to ensure their workers follow health and safety regulations may share an illustrative anecdote about a former employee who failed to put up the guardrail on the scaffold and received catastrophic injuries when they fell from 3 stories up. After the current workers share in that worker's experience via the anecdote, they will be far more likely to engage their own scaffolds. Now, pivoting to our own context for this webinar, why might we share anecdotes like this in the context of health communication? If you're a patient or a client, you might share an anecdote to enable your provider to understand your health-related experiences and concerns. What problems are you having? What effects are they having on your life? Or what evidence is there that an intervention or a treatment plan is going well? If you're a provider, you might share anecdotes for several reasons: to build relationships with your patients, help patients understand complicated diagnosis or treatment plans, or ensure patients understand the urgency of their conditions or the consequences of not adhering to the treatment plans. Basically, to convince them that they need to put up the figurative guardrails on their scaffolds. So, for our application, we will be looking at anecdotes in this assignment: COMO 460, Health Communication, Week 1, Assignment 1, Defining Health Communication. The purpose of this assignment is as follows. A question you might receive from people who learn you are taking a class in health communication is, so what does that mean? Health communication. Communication is such an integral part of our routine experiences with the healthcare system that it is often unnoticed or taken for granted. The purpose of this assignment is for you to write about experiences of seeking, processing, and sharing health-related information that stand out to you. The best way to understand a concept is to make the relevant applications to your experience. With our instructions, the textbook defines health communication as the way we seek, process, and share health-related information. Those 3 words, seek, process, and share, are going to be very important as we look at the assignment. Every single one of us engages in these 3 levels of health communication, even if we are not always aware. In a 500 to 700 word APA formatted paper, write about your own experience with health-related information. Yes, Baz.
So, as you know, I'm a musician and I have trouble counting above 8. So, how many pages are we talking for this number of words?
So 500 to 700 words will be two and a half, 3 pages at the most. If you hit 3 pages, you're probably a little long. So in the two
Okay,
to two and a half range would be a good goal.
I think I can count that high if I'm not wearing mittens. Thank you.
Okay. Let's see, where were we? So your paper, continuing with the instructions, will include one experience or episode for each of the following: seeking health-related information, processing health-related information, such as making a decision about what to do regarding your health, and last, sharing health-related information with someone else, whether in person or on social media or by other means. You will also need to make sure to cite your sources following APA formatting guidelines. And here is the assignment rubric. You'll see you get 20 points for your anecdote on seeking health-related information, 20 points each for processing and sharing health-related information, 20 points for complying with APA guidelines, and 20 points for grammar, structure, and style for a total of 100 points. Now that we've reviewed the assignment and figured out how long our paper needs to be, we will look at our next learning objective, which is to write about personal experiences in APA format. We just mentioned that you want to aim for about 2 to 2.5 pages, but for each anecdote to hit your word count and make sure you tell a good, well-detailed story, you might want to aim for about 150 to 200 words each in your anecdote. You'll need one on seeking health-related information, one on processing health-related information, and the third, as we already said, on sharing health-related information. For the next few slides, I'm going to share some questions that you might want to answer as you're working on crafting your anecdotes. Then we'll look at an example anecdote and examine some features that make it APA compliant. So first, to help you brainstorm and write about seeking health-related information, you may want to consider these questions. What type of information were you seeking and why? What steps did you take to look for the information? What challenges did you face? Who helped you? How did you feel during the search process? And what was the outcome? Did you find relevant information? And what was the quality of the information? To help with processing health-related information, you may want to consider these questions. What information were you trying to process? For instance, did you or a family member receive a new diagnosis, or were you trying to make a decision regarding a family member's or your health? If you had to make a decision, what were your options? Whom did you seek for emotional or practical support? What habits did you break, start, or change? What goals did you set, and what coping strategies did you use? Last, here's a set of questions to help with sharing health-related information. What type of information did you share and why? With whom did you share the information? Where did you get the information you shared? Through what means did you share the information? For instance, in person, on social media, via text or email? And what was the person's reaction? How did the information help them? Or did the information have an unintended negative effect? And if so, why? Yes, Basil.
I feel like this is an excellent point to bring up healthcare privacy. And while recognizing that we are talking about a paper, it's always a good point if you are working in healthcare to keep in mind that there are legal restrictions about disclosing patient information. And so using a pseudonym and otherwise anonymizing the person that you are discussing is really helpful. And even if they do disclose to you, that doesn't mean that they want you to disclose to the rest of the world. And I wanted to point out that you have marked John in quotation marks, just as you
Yes.
might also see John parentheses pseudonym, which are both great ways to help protect someone's privacy.
Right. And actually, in a little while, we're going to go over some ways to protect privacy as you're sharing your anecdotes. So, very
Awesome.
good. Yes. So, this is an anecdote that I wrote. I'm going to read it to you quickly, and then we're going to talk about um, how it fits some APA guidelines. So, I'll just read through. Last fall, my boyfriend, John, was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia. During the months he spent in the hospital, I checked the results of his frequent medical tests through the facility's online patient portal. The reports were full of words and indicators I had never seen, but because the hospital was hours away, I could not ask his doctors any questions. To keep up with his test results and roller coaster progress, I sought out reputable sources like websites from hospitals and the American Cancer Society, https://www.cancer.org. At times, the amount of information and my inability to sort it out felt hopelessly overwhelming. Early in this period, after a particularly frustrating afternoon of research, I was shocked when I received a tutoring submission from a health sciences student, focusing on the exact topic I had been trying to understand: the components of the human immune system. Thanks to that student's work, I finally understood that neutrophils are, quote, the body's first line of defense, unquote. ACU Online Student, Personal Communication, September 10th, 2023. And these were the cells most affected by both the pathology and treatment of my boyfriend's cancer. So you can also see I answered those who, what, when, where, why, how questions in my story. And now we're going to look at what APA compliant features are present in the text. So first, APA practice number 1, if you are writing about yourself, you definitely want to make sure you write in first person. That means you use the pronouns I, me, and my to tell the story. A rule of APA 7 is that when you write about yourself or even your actions as a writer or researcher, you should use I to help the reader better understand who is doing what. Next, you may have noticed that I referred to a whole website, the website of the American Cancer Society. I didn't refer to a specific page or specific information that I got from the website. I just named it and told you how I used it. In APA, if we refer to a whole website, we do so by naming the website in our text. We also put the URL for the website's homepage in parentheses after the name. So that's why I have https://www.cancer.org in parentheses in my sentence. Once you follow these steps, that's all you need to do to cite a whole website in APA format. You don't need to put a reference for the website on your references page. Another thing you may have noticed is that I referred to something called a personal communication with a student in my anecdote. If you share specific information that you've gained through a communication with another person, that means like a conversation, an email, text message, or so on, and it's not retrievable by your reader, you can cite it as a personal communication. To do this, usually you will put the person's first initial and last name, then a comma, then the phrase personal communication, then a comma, and then the date. For instance, I've got J. Jones, personal communication, March 25th, 2024. If you do this, you do not need to include a corresponding reference on your references page because the reader can't retrieve the conversation, so you don't need a reference. Before we move on, let's clarify when you actually need to use this strategy. If you say, quote, I felt better after I had a conversation with my grandmother, you don't need to cite that conversation as a personal communication because you're not sharing with the reader or your audience any information that your grandma shared with you. On the other hand, if you say, through a conversation with my grandmother, I learned that blueberries are the best source of antioxidants. In that case, you're sharing a specific detail and putting it forth as a fact. So that means you need to cite your personal communication using your grandma's first initial and last name. Yes, Basil, do you have comments on blueberries?
Yes, it's common knowledge that they are the best and that blueberry pies are there for the best pies. Do we,
Absolutely.
yeah, we don't need to conclude a citation for something that's common knowledge, right?
Well, someone might say that everybody knows that blueberries are the best source of antioxidants, but it's kind of specific and other people might disagree with you. So I think it's probably a good idea if you cite your grandma as your source in that case.
Hmm. I'm disappointed to learn that there are people who don't acknowledge this universally held truth.
I'm sorry to share that information with you, Basil.
Ah, rats. Well, I'll let you get back to the presentation.
Thank you. So, as you also probably noticed in my example anecdote, I was talking about a student. So I did not use a first name and last initial in my citation. This was for reasons of confidentiality, which Basil touched on earlier. I can't tell you the name of the student I was working with, and they did not give me permission to cite them. Since I couldn't name the student, I put a really short description of who they were in my citation. I wrote ACU online student, personal communication, September 10th, 2023. And if you need to do this, you can similarly write a brief description of the person in your sentence or in your parentheses and use the personal communication citation format. Again, you don't need to include a corresponding reference because the communication is not retrievable by your audience. This brings us to APA practice 4, respecting confidentiality. In my anecdote, I limited my description of my student to a health sciences student. And since you, my audience, already know where I work, I also went ahead and shared that there were an ACU online student. However, this level of information is limited to what you need to know to understand my story. You needed to know why I was communicating with the person, and you needed to know why that person would have been writing about the immune system and taken somewhat of a scholarly approach to the concept. But even though I've shared this level of information, you have no idea who that student is. So I've protected their privacy, which is necessary to consider when you share anecdotes, unless you have a person's specific permission to identify them, especially as Basil said, when we're talking about healthcare. And as Basil pointed out, I put my boyfriend's not real name, John, in quotation marks because this matter of confidentiality applies to me and you and your family too. If you want to give someone a synonym, you can put their name in quotation marks to reflect APA guidelines, or as Basil said, you could put the word pseudonym in parentheses after their name. Either will work. So I encourage you to apply this practice if you use pseudonyms for anyone you mention when you're sharing your personal anecdotes. Before we move on, let's remember a couple things. You do not need to add entries to your references list to cite personal experiences, whole websites, or personal communications. But we are writing in APA format, which means we need to cite other retrievable sources using APA in-text citations and references. In the next few slides, I'm going to quickly show you some examples of resources that you may end up citing and referencing in some portion of this paper. For instance, here, you may want to cite your textbook, especially in the introduction of your paper as you're setting up your discussion. The textbook follows the reference format for a book. So we have the author's names, Dupre and Cook Overton, last names, first initials, connected by an ampersand. I have the year in parentheses, I have the title of the book, I have the edition number, and I have the publisher. To cite the book in text according to APA guidelines, you can put the author's names and the year in parentheses at the end of your sentence, or you can name the authors in your sentence and put the year in parentheses after their names. If you share a specific detail from a web page, you may want to cite a specific web page in your paper. So here's an example of how you could cite an organizational web page where the organization is both the author and the name of the website. This commonly happens when we're referring to hospitals or health organizations like the American Cancer Society, which I've used as an example here. First, I put the organization's name, then I put the year in parentheses. Here, the web page didn't have a specific date, so I put N period D period for no date. If you're citing a website that does have a date, please put as much date information as you have. If there's a year, put a year. If there's a month and a year, use both. If there's a month, date, and year, use all three. For instance, 2020, May 20th. Next, you'll put the title of the web page. I did not need to put the name of the website after that because I've already written American Cancer Society as the author. This is an idiosyncrasy of organizational web pages. And last, I put the URL. To cite this page in text, I would put the name of the organization and the date information in parentheses, or I could put the name of the organization in my sentence and put the date information after it. Even if it's N period D period, we have to put the date information. Another thing that might come up in this assignment is citing a social media post. If you refer to a specific social media post, for instance, one that you shared with someone in your third anecdote, you need to add a reference and a citation to it in your paper. So you can cite and reference in this way. This is an example of how to do a Facebook post. First, we put the name of the Facebook page. Then we put the specific date information for the post. Next, we put the first 20 words of the post to act as the title. Because a video was attached to this post, I put the words video attached in square brackets. Then, since it was a status update, I put status update in square brackets to tell what type of post it was. Next, I put the name of the social media website, Facebook. And last, I put the URL where I found the post. And we'll still cite in text by using the name of the author and the year. American Cancer Society 2024 or the American Cancer Society 2024 shared. And another popular resource you might end up referring to is a YouTube video. To format the reference for a YouTube video, put the name of the YouTube account as the author. Then you put the year and the other date information in parentheses. Then the title of the video, the word video in square brackets. Next, the name of the site, YouTube, and last, the URL. Here's a handy dandy chart to sum up how to write your in-text citations according to the number of authors. If you have one author, including an organizational author, you would put just the name of the author in parentheses or in the sentence, followed by the year. If you have two authors, like your textbook, you would name them in parentheses, put an ampersand between their names, and put the year. On the other hand, if you write their names out in a sentence in your text, for instance, in the bottom part, it says, Dupre and Cook Overton 2020 acknowledged. We don't use an ampersand in that case. We spell out the word and. Last, if you have a source with 3 or more authors, you use only the last name of the first author followed by the words et al. That's et space al followed by a period. That means and others in Latin, and you'll use this format every time you refer to that source in your text. One more note, you'll see in the bottom row where I have citations naming the authors in sentences, I've paired the citations with past tense verbs, indicated, acknowledged, found. In APA format, when we refer to what previous authors have done, said, or found, we need to use past tense verbs because they did it in the past. So please follow this guideline as you write your anecdote paper. Remember too that if you happen to directly quote, you'll need to include the page or paragraph number for a text-based source or a timestamp for an audio-visual source, but only if you're directly quoting with the citation. So here I've got Dupre and Cook Overton 2020 defined health communication as the way we seek, process, and share health-related information. Then I've put P for page, followed by a period, 5. I know we zipped through these really fast because we're doing a shorter webinar today. So if you need help with specifics of formatting citations and references for different sources, you can consult your APA 7 publication manual or the official APA website. This is a link under the first bullet to a wonderful page on the APA website where you can basically click your way to find the format for any type of reference you need. This includes other forms of social media like Instagram or TikTok. And of course, you're welcome to email us at the Online Writing Center, onlinewritingcenter@acu.edu for help, and we'll provide that email address again later. So this brings us to our third learning objective. We've talked about how to write our individual anecdotes, and we need to know how to put them all together into an APA formatted draft. For organization, we usually consider the questions from the assignment to identify major headings. In this case, it's pretty easy because we know that you need to have 3 major sections in the body of the paper. You'll have one anecdote on seeking health-related information, another on processing it, and a third on sharing it. That means each of these phrases can become a level 1 heading in your draft. To help with APA formatting, I do encourage you to try out our ACU APA course paper template that Dr. Considine created because it has all the settings for font, margins, title page, heading, references. It's all built in. So right now we're going to switch to look at the template that I have set up for this assignment. Let me see if I can get my screen share to switch. Can you see it, Basil?
I can.
Excellent. I did it. So as you can see, we've started out with the elements of the title page. We have the title, Defining Health Communication, an extra double space. Then we have the student's first name, middle initial, and last name. We have the name of their program that they're writing for, Applied Communication, the name of the university, Abilene Christian University. We have the course number and name, COMO 460 Health Communication. Um, the professor this term for this course is Dr. Crystal Doherty, and the due date is May 5th, 2024. You can also see up here, we've got page numbers in the upper right-hand corner, which is required by APA format and again, built into our wonderful template. Before the introductory paragraph, we repeat the title. We don't need a separate heading for introduction. So I've just put Defining Healthcare Communication up here at the top. Then I've got a brief introductory paragraph. You can write a brief introduction, provide background information on why we're talking about anecdotes. I've slipped in Dupre and Cook-Overton's definition of health communication and used a page number because I am directly quoting this time. You might also want to answer questions like how do anecdotes fit into health communication and what type of anecdotes are you going to share in your draft? Down lower, you can see that I've put all the major headings that we talked about a few minutes ago. The headings are centered in bold and in title case. So this means that all the major words, including prepositions and conjunctions of 4 or more letters, are capitalized. So we've got seeking health-related information, processing health-related information, and sharing health-related information. Again, those big 3 points. Beneath each question, I've just pasted in my brainstorming questions. And if you would like to do the same, you can put those questions in there and try answering them, or you can just write your anecdote and see what you come up with under the heading. At the bottom, I do have another major heading for the conclusion. In your conclusion, you may want to review what 3 types of anecdotes you've shared, and also consider what can you and your readers learn from your experiences, and what does your sharing of these stories show about the usefulness of anecdotes in healthcare communication. Remember too that at the end, you're going to have a separate page with your references. These are the references that I used in my PowerPoint. They are listed alphabetically. Here we have the interesting situation of multiple works by the same author because I had a bunch of resources from the American Cancer Society. In this case, I listed them chronologically, starting with the ND no date source. So we've got ND 2023 and then 2024. And then last we've got the textbook, Dupre and Cook-Overton. You can also see that these are written with a hanging indent that actually looks a little weird. What's going on here? My hanging indent is not hanging in enough. Well, these need to go in another 1/4 of an inch, and I don't know why they're like that.
If you delete those spaces and hit Control T, does it correct?
Control T.
Yeah, I think the problem here is that the spaces are being added manually.
No,
Uh,
I used the formatting. That's weird. Anyway,
oh, actually, I know what to do. Can you open up the styles pane and then reapply the APA reference style?
hmm, let's
It
just do
looks like there's
this.
a line break there. Yeah.
That That is probably from where I pasted it from my PowerPoint into here. So we're getting some good practice in fixing our reference formatting when we make a mistake.
And I will say that we get emails all the time. I think you need to delete a line break before the link.
I
We get
believe you are
emails all the time
correct.
from students who say, "Hey, this is doesn't quite look right. Can you tell me what's going on?" And that's totally fine. It helps if you're specific, like, "Oh, page 4, the second reference," or something like that. But it's totally okay to email online running center at acu.edu with a copy of your draft and a very specific question like that.
Yes. So now we have hanging indents correct. Fabulous. So now we've also learned how to do some troubleshooting in a document. Happy accident. So that is our APA template. That is how we can apply styles, actually. So this is pretty cool. If you want to make your heading, you can type your heading, seeking health-related information, open your styles pane up here, and then you click APA Level 1, and it applies it automatically for you. So let me switch back to my PowerPoint, which is here. We've looked at our draft, and this concludes our discussion of writing about anecdotes. Today we used COMO 460, Week 1, Assignment 1, Defining Health Communication, 2, Understand the Characteristics and Purpose of Anecdotes. We talked about blueberries being the best form of antioxidant. Yes, Basil.
Uh, uh, your screen isn't quite sharing right. I think we're supposed to be seeing a slide, and all I can see is the top bar for PowerPoint right now.
Oh, well, that's weird. I'm seeing it. Let me see if I can stop share and reshare. How about now?
There we go. I can see your slides now.
Excellent. So again, we're wrapping up. We went through how to understand the characteristics and purpose of anecdotes, how to write about personal experiences in APA format, and we developed an APA formatted draft in our template. Before we finish, let me tell you a little more about the services we can provide in our online writing center. You can check out the online writing center homepage in My ACU. Watch this video, which will be linked in the PDF of slides for this presentation if you want to follow the steps to make an appointment and submit a paper. We work with you at any stage of your writing and offer currently 2 types of appointments that are both listed on the schedule. You can schedule an email or asynchronous appointment where you upload your paper. We send you feedback by email in 24 hours. That will be headed with the title Writing Center Report. You can also make a Zoom appointment where you go to the schedule and you will click on a Zoom link at the time of your appointment and get to Zoom with a tutor in real time. You can access too many writing related resources on our online writing center website. Our updated process for submitting a paper is as follows. You schedule an appointment at WC Online, and then you just upload your paper to the appointment form. Very easy. You can contact us at Online Writing Center at acu.edu. Click the middle link to schedule an appointment. Click the bottom link to visit the Online Writing Center website. We do provide other resources like our APA course paper template, which is linked here. We have a YouTube channel with some webinars. We have our Online Writing Center blog with a range of helpful posts by tutors past and present. We also offer a lot of other webinars. If you click on the Our Website link, it will take you to the schedule for the upcoming webinars, as well as to the recordings for the older webinars. You can also go to our YouTube channel and subscribe. And I thought I'd mention, since this is for COMO 460, and perhaps you would also like to learn more about Writing about other people, addressing matters like confidentiality, personal communication, citations. We're going to be having another webinar on Wednesday, May 1st, from 6 to 7 p.m. Central Time called Writing About Others' Perspectives. If you'd like to register for that, you can click on the tiny URL link, and we will be discussing Como 460's Week 2 assignment during that webinar. If you register at the tiny URL, you will also get the links to our slide decks and the recording sent to you the next day. So with that, we reached the end of our webinar, Writing About Anecdotes in APA Format. I thank you all for learning with me today, and I thank you, Basil, for making this a fun time as always.
Thanks for presenting.
Thank you. I will stop the recording now.